Good afternoon, evening. That's what it is here where I am in Houston. Good afternoon, my YouTube fam. I have neglected you for a couple of weeks, and I wasn't even planning on doing a video tonight. And before I sit down to eat my salad that I have here, I was like, I need to make a short video to put up on YouTube for all my potential law school, non-traditional student friends. As I told some of you before, I think in some of my previous videos, at the time of recording these, and you might be watching these another time, it is actually November of 2023, and I just took the MPRE. That is the test. It's the, what is MPRE? It's the Model Rules of Professional Responsibility. This is the test that you take. They used to include the MPRE as part of the actual bar that you would take. Now it's a separate test, but you have to pass the MPRE to get licensed to practice. And every state has a different score that you need to make on the MPRE in order to be approved to practice in their state. In Texas, I think it's 35. There's 60 questions. 10 of the questions on the MPRE are thrown out. They're like a test question that they're considering, something they're considering testing on. So they take these 10 questions out. So really, there's 50 questions that count, and in Texas, you have to get 35 of those correct. So I've been taking a class this semester that is the professional responsibility class that goes all over the Model Rules of Professional Responsibility. Every state follows these model rules. This is how it's your ethics class. It's about how attorneys are supposed to conduct themselves, what you can do. It's all about, how to handle conflicts and just your professional integrity, that kind of thing. So along with doing class in school, I've been studying for the MPRE. Also, I signed up for a class. It's a trial advocacy class, and it met 2 weekends in a row, but in these 2 weekends, I could get 2 credits. Now, this is not graded classes. They're pass-fail classes, but they are credits that count towards your graduation. So it's a good thing. A lot of students do these type of classes because they're experiential. So what I did not know when I started this semester was that the MPRE was going to be falling at in between these 2 weekends of trial advocacy. And so keeping up with MPRE study and trial advocacy for me has been crazy, which is why I have not been posting on YouTube. All that said, as a matter of fact, I actually took off a day of school. I skipped classes for a full day this past week just because it was the only way I could survive having done last weekend's classes. I pulled an all-nighter. I pulled one of those where you work till 6 in the morning, go to bed for 2 hours, get up and go again. And let's just say, I don't advise us non-traditionals to be doing such things that we did when we were younger, because we don't recover as well. Anyway, I thought I would take this opportunity though to maybe answer a couple more questions that I've received, kind of combining some together, which had to do with how did you determine where you wanted to go to law school. And then also, many of us as non-traditional students, it's been a long time since we were in undergrad, and maybe we did not care as much when we were in undergrad about what our grades would be. And now that we're a more mature adult, and you're wanting to go to law school, it's like, oh dear, I didn't do as well in undergrad kind of thought. I would just encourage you with the fact that your law school application is more than the stats. Now, do the stats matter? Yes, they do matter. It does matter what your GPA is, and it does matter what you score on the LSAT. Although that said, I've heard that they're changing things in these schools, and they're changing the LSAT. They're not going to be doing the logic games anymore on the LSAT. There's all kinds of things. I do not know any of this for sure, but just check, because things very well may have changed since, just in the last year or two. So whenever you're watching this, check to see what the standards are for LSAT and for whatever school that you're trying to go to. I mean, it might be that you don't have to take the LSAT. I know that some schools, not all schools, Some schools will consider the GRE, the grad school exam as well for entrance. So some schools don't require the LSAT. You would need to look that up. I've mentioned this in actually several of the videos that I've made, but if you were considering going to law school, you need to sign up on the LSAC site, LSAC. You've got to sign up for that site. That, number one, is where you're going to apply for all these law schools, but that's the site where you're going to get all of the stats that you're asking me for this information. I don't just have it sitting around. When you log into the LSAC site, I think it's lsac.org, that's where you can access the information. You can look up every school. Like I knew that I wanted to go to law school in Houston, Texas. We have 3 law schools in Houston, Texas. We have South Texas College of Law. We have Thurgood Marshall. I think it's just Thurgood Marshall College of Law. I think that's what it's called. And then we have the University of Houston Law Center. So we have 3 law schools here in Houston. I thought Baylor would be a great idea. I knew I wanted to go somewhere in Texas. I planned to practice in Texas. I considered Baylor. I honestly did not have the stats for Baylor. I did not have a good LSAT score. I had great GPA, really good GPA, but not the best LSAT score. So and Baylor just requires much higher. I think they have I think Baylor's requirements may actually be higher than University of Texas. Anyway, I logged on to lsac.org, looked up the schools, and they all had a chart graph. And you could look on one leg of the chart has a GPA and the other leg has the LSAT, and you can go and you can match and you can find out how many students with your LSAT and your GPA, how many students applied with those stats and how many they accepted that had your stats. And for me, at South Texas, which is where I wanted to go, I actually preferred South Texas over University of Houston. And South Texas, where I am, is just known. They are so known for their advocacy program. They win more awards than any other law school in advocacy programs, like the mock trial tournaments and stuff. We have infinitely more awards than other law schools. We just do. Apparently, I think we have like 156 awards, and the next closest law school with numbers of wins is like 67 or something. Like it's more than double what other schools have done. So I knew I wanted to go to South Texas. It has a great reputation in the area of Texas where I'm going to be practicing. There's a lot of South Texas grads. It was just that kind of thing meant something. Now, if I planned on, let's say, you all know I lived in Nashville for 25 years. If I planned to move back to Nashville and practice, you know, maybe it would have been a good idea for me to choose to go to a law school in Tennessee. But because I live here in Texas, that's where I plan to practice. I'm going to do that. Now, I believe Tennessee participates in the uniform bar exam, as does Texas. And so if I ever wanted to be licensed to practice in Tennessee, once I pass the Texas UBE, then I would just be able to apply for a license in the state of Tennessee. And depending on what their score requirements are, I would just be, you know, allowed in to practice in Tennessee. So if you're concerned though about your stats, what I have to say is, it is the whole package. You know, you have to write a personal statement when you're applying for law school. You also get 2 or 3, I think, depending on the school, sometimes they allow you to do more recommendations, professional recommendations. I personally used 2 former professors, but I recently went back to school and finished my degree, and so I had recent professors. Many of you would have finished your degrees, you know, 20 years ago, so calling up a professor to give a recommendation today might seem awkward. Now, if you had a particularly stellar experience with a professor, even if it was 20 years ago, if that professor's still around, that may be worth, you know, getting that recommendation from someone who knew you as a student and who could speak to your character and who could speak to who you are and what kind of student you would be. Otherwise, you know, get a professional recommendation. It doesn't have to be an attorney that you know. As a matter of fact, that kind of makes no difference. If you've worked in, I just met with a girl and she's a tax accountant. She could have used someone that she's worked with, like a boss or a mentor in the field that she's been working in for I don't know, the last 10 years, and had that person write a recommendation for her. It's more about getting a recommendation that's a professional recommendation from someone who knows you, who knows your character, who knows your work quality, what you're like to be around, can you take instruction, what you think like, that kind of thing. In my case, I actually had a government professor in college. I had to take an American government class, and he's the one that actually said, he goes, have you ever considered going to law school? And I said, yeah, actually I have quite a long time, but it's just never been the right time in my life. And so a year later, when I actually was applying for law schools, I contacted that professor, and he was thrilled to death to do a recommendation for me. So I wrote a pretty strong personal statement. I was very confident just about what I've done in my life, what I feel like I bring to the table, and just showed in my personal statement my vision for my future and wanting to get a law degree, why I want to get this law degree. You know, just expressing this isn't just something I've decided to do on a whim after living an adult life in a completely different profession. This wasn't a whim. This is a timing thing, and now is the time, and this is what I'm planning on doing, and I would like to do this at your school, you know, at this school, and why. Yeah, if you are going to apply to 5 different law schools, you're going to need to tailor that personal statement a little bit, and be sure you don't accidentally submit your personal statement for one school to the other one with their names mentioned. But for me, honestly, that wasn't hard because I knew exactly where I wanted to go. I targeted South Texas. That's where I wanted to be. I had looked at the stats. I knew that everyone who had applied that had my stats was accepted. So my biggest thing to all of you listening today is go to lsac.org, lsac.org. Go ahead, log in. You don't have to pay right away. I mean, you're not having to do that right away, but you should be able to once you even log in. You'll be able to go to the place where you can find the stats on the different schools and search and see. If there's something particular that you want to do with your law degree, you know, if you know you want to work in legislative issues as an attorney, and your ultimate goal is to be in Washington, D.C., well, then you might want to look at law schools whose grads are working in those fields. And that doesn't mean you necessarily have to go to Harvard to do that. But, you know, there are certain law schools that may have programs and professors that have done work in policy and legislation and that kind of thing. The same thing if your goal is, you know, you're super interested in personal injury, well, you know, find schools that have really strong programs in personal injury. That's kind of a common thing, but yeah, I mean, you could do that. Or like me, if you know that you want to be in the courtroom and you really want to be an advocate for clients, find a school that's known for their advocacy program. Like I said, I was complaining because I've been so busy, but these last 2 weekends that I did this advocacy class, you know, we actually did opening statements. We did direct questioning. We did cross-examinations, and I just did a closing this afternoon. You would not believe how many people go to law school and they learn all these things. They do internships, and then they never do that. And all of a sudden they're out practicing and they're in court, and they don't know how to offer evidence, and they don't know how to tender, and they don't, you know, they don't know these things because they never got to practice it. So you don't have to be a part of mock trial or moot court to actually learn to do those things. You can do what I've just done, which is take some weekends where you're learning these skills. But experiential opportunity while you're in law school is huge. So find out if the school that you're interested in, what kind of experiential programs do they have? Are they just teaching you book knowledge, or are they actually giving you an opportunity to practice what it is that you want to do in the future. Because I just think that was hugely important for me. You know, obviously University of Houston Law Center, it's big, you know, public university, a lot of money going into that school. It's public, whereas I'm at a much smaller private law school. But, you know, University of Houston is not winning the awards that we're winning either. And it's bigger and just a little less personal. And I just feel better at South Texas. I wanted to be at that smaller school. I wanted that more personalized experience. And I got it. But, you know, you're going to have, you may have different goals. You may have different desires for your experience. And some people, you know, they want law school, but they want the college experience too. Like they want to go to law school where there's a mascot, where there's still, you know, ball games that you can go to and that kind of thing. If that's the case, you're going to need to pick a law school that's connected to a university in some kind of way. And that's not a bad thing. If that's what you want, if you still want that collegiate kind of experience while you're in law school, go for it. There's plenty of that out there. If you are like me, I mean, I kind of tend to think most non-traditional law students are not going to care about that. We just, you know, you just want to go to school, learn what you need to learn, and pass the bar and get on with life and get to practicing law. And so that's what I felt like. The other thing and the last thing that I'm going to say, because I'm going a little long this time, when I said I was going to be short. The ABA has now approved online law school experience. Now, there were many online law schools previously, but California was the only state that allowed non-ABA approved law school degrees to sit for the bar. That's what you could get a degree from some of these online law schools, and you could sit for the bar, but only in California. And if you got, you know, if you passed the bar in California, you had to practice in California for 5 years before you could go to another state and be approved to practice in those states. So it was a big ordeal. Well, the ABA is now approving online law schools. So South Texas, where I attend, actually just started their first semester of 1L online students. I believe it's still considered a part-time program, but if you are a working adult and you're thinking, I just can't take off work and I can't forsake my full-time income to be a full-time student, there are part-time online programs now. They're new. But as you're watching this, I mean, this particular opportunity is growing and expanding. I know there are more law schools than just mine that's doing this. So look into that, because that might be an option for you if you're trying to add law school into your existing life. And there's still, you know, financial aid available for those type things as well. So, all right, I'm going to wrap it up tonight. I thought I'd give you all a little different background. I'm usually sitting over at my desk and you get to see, you know what? I'm gonna take y'all with me here just a second. Let you see the pretty view outside my windows. I live here downtown Houston. I will for the next month and a half. I'm moving at the end of the year, but that's my view right now out my windows. And the law school is, you're not gonna be able to see because the sun's there, but the law school is just right down there. You can kind of see the roof of the law school, and there we go. So I do all my classes over there. It's wonderful. I only walk like 4 minutes, and I'm sitting in class from here. But I am moving out at the end of this year. I have a house about an hour north of here, and I'm gonna go ahead and move into my house because I'm only doing school here 2 days a week next semester. And so I don't mind commuting for the 2 days a week. It would have been not good to have that big old commute for 4 days a week worth of class and Langdells and just so much going on. It was the best decision in the world to live really close to the law school for my first year. And now I guess it was like a year and a half in law school. So, all right, y'all have a wonderful, it's a weekend for me while I'm doing this. So I was gonna say have a wonderful weekend, but you could be watching this at any time. But again, as always, if you have questions, feel free to ask me more questions, and hopefully this answered a few for you today. And I will post more as soon as I can. We're hitting the final season, so I don't know how much I'm going to be able to post in the coming month, but I'll do my best. All right. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.